Hi, I'm Jonathan. Welcome to our garden. Today we're going to talk about why we covered our yard with wood chips and why you might want to do the same. Everything here used to be sand, grass, and weeds. We wanted to grow more food, more plants, better plants, and we couldn't do that because the sand doesn't hold much moisture, it doesn't have much nutrients that the plants can use, and generally things don't grow well in it. So how did we fix it? Wood chips. So why wood chips? Wood chips have a number of advantages. They help retain water, they even out the soil temperature, they smother grass and weeds, and as they break down, they nourish the soil and provide nutrients that our plants will eventually use. But there are some things to be aware of when using wood chips. The chips that we use and that we're going to recommend to you, and we'll cover that in a minute, are fairly large and coarse. A lot of annual vegetable type plants are simply not strong enough to punch through wood chips, and they often will get torn up by wood chips as you're moving around. So we don't recommend them for vegetable gardening. If you want a vegetable garden, you can do that with wood chips. Just do it in a separate area with raised beds, or you can simply scrape away the wood chips in one area and make an earth bed. We chose raised beds for our garden, and we'll talk about that in a different episode. As an example of how wood chips can be beneficial, we're standing behind a fairly old orange tree that we've had on our property for a while. You can see that the old growth is a little crinkly, the leaves are small, it's not very good. Since adding the wood chips, we have fresh new growth, large leaves, and they're generally clean and healthy. The soil was simply too dry and we couldn't water enough to keep this tree happy. Now that we have the wood chips, they're changing the sand into actual usable soil and they're retaining enough moisture that this tree can use. So we're seeing immense growth and changes in the plants that we already have. So how do you get enough wood chips to do what we've done? Our property is only 1/10 to 2/10 of an acre that we've covered with wood chips. You'd be surprised that still takes a lot of wood chips to do a good job. Our main source for wood chips were tree service companies. If you happen to notice a tree service either taking down a tree or doing tree trimming in your neighborhood or in the area where you're at, you can get the name of the company off the side of their trucks, give them a call, or you can simply stop and talk to the crew that's doing the work. A lot of times they'll be happy to drop off a truckload of chips at your property. They normally get charged to dispose of those chips, so if they can do it for free, it's a win for both parties. If you can't find a tree service in your area that'll deliver wood chips, another option is a service like Chip Drop. Chip Drop arranges for tree companies to make drops for you. Check out their website. Pay particular attention to the expectations of service on their website. Should be fairly easy to find. It's chipdrop.com. When you do that, make sure that that's a plan that's good for you. A lot of times you don't have control over exactly how much you're going to get, where it gets put, or when it shows up. If you're okay with that, maybe that'll work for you. Another option is to contact your local city or county government. A lot of times they'll either, as part of Parks and Recreation or Sanitation Department, they'll maintain some kind of chipping facility. They'll often have huge piles of those that you can simply go get or arrange with them to pick up. However you get your wood chips, make sure that you've set enough space aside to keep them. It can take a lot of wood chips and they can take up a fair amount of room. You've got to have somewhere to put them while you're arranging them in your property. So once you've found a source for wood chips, how do you go about applying them? Well, there's 3 main methods and we used all 3 for our property. The first one, and the most effective, is to cover the area that you want to suppress with cardboard first. You can just get regular cardboard, shipping containers, delivery boxes, anything like that. You put the cardboard down and then you layer about 3 inches of mulch over that. If you can do more, the more you can put on there, the better. Weeds will still manage to get through that. You just pull them out individually and it should be fairly manageable. Eventually, the weeds will stop completely as they get smothered by the cardboard and the wood chips. About halfway through doing our property, we ran out of cardboard and we simply couldn't get enough fast enough. So we then switched to using paper. You can buy 3-foot wide rolls of contractor's paper, packing paper, butcher's paper. Any of those is better than nothing. You do the same process, you lay them down, overlap them by an inch or two to make sure that there's no clear space for weeds to grow through, and then you layer wood chips on top of that. Now I eventually ran out of that as well, so for the last parts, we simply put the wood chips down without an underlayment. The caution for that is, if you have stubborn weeds that you're trying to push down, that's probably not enough. In our case, most of the areas that we were covering, there wasn't much growing there in the first place, so it worked pretty well. We do occasionally pull out the odd 1 or 2 weeds that manage to get through. That's not that big of a deal to maintain. One other thing to keep in mind, don't use landscaping fabric or weed block. Neither of those will break down quickly, and we don't want to stop all growth completely. We just want to smother the weeds until they're manageable, and eventually they'll disappear. Cardboard takes long enough to break down to do the weed suppression that we want, but then once it starts breaking down, it returns back to the earth and nourishes the soil. A weed block or landscape fabric is not going to do that. It'll keep the sand or earth and the wood chips separate, which is not what we're going for. So just keep that in mind. For our property, it took about 5 trucks of wood chips to get the job done to our satisfaction. Be aware that it may take more than you initially expect. You don't need to get it all done at once. If you need to, set up one area with cardboard, chip that section, and then work on the next one as you get more wood chips or cardboard coming in. So eventually we plan to turn this into a food forest, where we have plants that we don't have to manage, but that provide us food. Now we also really like plants that unfortunately we do have to manage, like our tomatoes, cucumbers, other annual vegetables. We created a raised bed system for them. In the next video, we'll talk about the beds, how we built them, and how we maintain them. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.